there have been of, property and even government infrastructural development projects which were decisively affected. But the process to manage disaster in our country remains questionable. Whereas some efforts of the government are exhibited, but it is not enough, especially looking at the losses and the level of preparedness. And what we look at in our analysis, that is a problem that should be possibly discussed, and for the policymakers outside there, we look at how this should end. I would like to bring finally this short statement of my preamble to let everyone know that Uganda has a policy that is in place to manage disaster. October 2010, the Directorate of Relief, Disaster Preparedness and Refugees, Office of the Prime Minister, launched the National Policy for Disaster Preparedness and Management. But it is not yet known to look at the level of the effectiveness of this policy and to match with the number of occurrences. We look at the refugees, we look at the famine, we look at even the disaster, the human disaster. Like there is a human social disaster which is happening in this city, Kampala, Honorable, where we are having children on the streets, and they're also coming from Karamoja. Karamoja is hit by famine, and at the same time, the children, young ones, it's a disaster. And the state, the civil society seems to be quiet over this disaster. It's a disaster. These children are climbing over the poles because they begin to do some kind of work to try to show that they want also help. And this is a problem that I think as a country, if we are to take steps of development, that should be handled. It is the role of the state where we bring in the state, especially in the matters of the economy, and with an obligation as given by our Constitution of the Republic of Uganda to ensure the socio-economic welfare of the people. That's why, Honorable, as our former state minister, as a former member of parliament, with the concern, with all that you drove you and that still drives you to serve the people of Uganda, how can we bring stability in the midst of such occurrence of disaster and the way how disaster is managed? It's a pleasure to welcome you to give us your analytical point of view, that is to teach, to inform, and possibly have policy proposals that may help our country to move forward.
Thank you, my brother. The point of discussion here today, which is the disaster management policy. In essence, the question being asked is to what extent has Uganda, as a nation, how prepared is it to manage these disasters at the time when they come? The overall office charged with the disaster management in this country is the Prime Minister's office. And as the Prime Minister's office has a responsibility to coordinate. And in this coordination, you don't need, it's not about coordinating the disaster management when it occurs. It coordinates prohibition so that you prohibit, you mitigation of disaster. If it comes, how do you manage it? How can you prohibit it? Because the disaster, some of the disasters are prohibitable. Because you can prohibit disaster as a result of food shortage. And how do you provide for that? You provide it through food storage systems. So the one question is, are we prepared? Do we have food storage systems? Even when we have this kind of, some of these disasters, like for example, the last time we have had the epidemic diseases, we have had Ebola, we have had the COVID, and there are some other diseases that come out of this kind of, as a result of unpreparedness. How prepared are we? Do we have enough facilities within the hospitals? Has the Prime Minister's office coordinated the hospitals to manage these pandemic diseases as they come? Or it is it is firefighting. Have the Prime Minister's office coordinated the food security for this country to make sure that there's food storage systems so that at any one time we don't face hunger if there is drought or if there is, for any reason, and there is a shortage of food. And more often when you go into this thing, you find the answer is no. Because as a government, Prime Minister's office, there are some kind of system that has to be put in place. Of course, we need funds. Are we budgeting enough money to allocate the Ministry of Disaster? Or we budget for it only when that disaster comes? Are we working toward that prevention? Are we working, for example, to relocate people within the mountainous areas, like for those ones of Bududa, Ergun, where there is imminent landslides? So you more find in most cases, it is for God and yourself. So we have not put up adequate measures and strategies to stop this strategy, to stop these kind of disasters. So now, therefore, this calls for a proactive and entrenched budget system that will take care of disaster management. And besides, when you look at this disaster management, what about, is the management of disasters cushioned from all these inadequacies that we have in this system? Like, for example, delivery systems, social services. Look at the hospitals. Do you have the hospital that can manage a disaster? Are hospitals equipped? Do they have enough beds? Do they have enough room? So, or you can see, imagine the last time when we had Ebola, we had to take our patients to the playground. That was Nambole. And more often, even when we had Ebola outbreak from Congo, patients were being managed outside the health unit services. So that means that we are not doing enough investment. What are the other ministries that have to coordinate in terms of when you want to manage a disaster? Food security. The Minister of Agriculture is key. You cannot rule it out. How much are you funding agriculture? For example, food security. Are you investing in those kind of services? Are you investing in seeds? Are you investing in good practices? Are there early warning signs? If you go to look to the other Minister of ICT, communication, are there early signs? Are they being detected so that you prevent the massive, So all these kind of things, the answers are negative. So if answers are negative, is the policy helping us? The answer again is negative. The policy is not helping us because we have not adequately prepared for it. We have not adequately coordinated. We have not adequately provided resources. We have not adequately put human resource management. We have not put in thinking. We have not put in research. So all these things are pointers that our disaster management policy is wanting.
I would like to come to you on the critical point out of what you've shared with us, and maybe recalling what was the government, all along what has been the government position, and what hinders. Of course, there have been initiatives intending to have that level of preparedness. It remains a question of debate why there is not enough commitment to take action that are deliberately intending to bridge that gap, to solve those existing challenges. And maybe you have what you may share with us that in the future or sooner than later, we'll be able to come out from such predicament. Number two, if you allow me to also say this, there are a number of disasters that you've mentioned. And we've talked about, including the recent one, when we had the pandemic of COVID-19. And if we were to go forward in that discussion, first of all, I first say we thank God who intervened, that me and you are alive, much as the government also demands some credit.
is a government of more, is a prime minister, is a coordinator and the harmonizer of government programs, of the whole government, ministries, departments, and agencies. So the moment you have that lack of clarity by the person holding that office, you are bound to have this policy gap that we are talking about. Mm-hmm. You are bound to have these policy gaps that we are talking about. Mm-hmm. So the damning of the person to occupy the office of the prime minister should be a bar above. Mm-hmm. But I don't want to discuss personalities in this case. Mm. Whether the current prime minister Nabanja measures up or he doesn't measure up.
She's a very active lady, and that's what
he's very active in mobilization. I see him. That's true. But in mobilization, that is, he's known for more for mobilization.
It is believed during COVID that she was able to immediately ensure that people received the 100,000 who were vulnerable.
You see, that is crisis management, and that's what we are talking about, firefighting. You cannot start distributing money to people who are prone, who have been hit by disaster, and you start by giving cash bonanza of say 100,000. What is that? But had we made, for example, during that COVID, because the most important thing was food, if we had a system of silo system, food storage systems, then we would be getting food from the government storage systems, distributing it to the people, not distributing money. Now, when you give somebody money and he doesn't have where to buy that kind of food, what is the money?
Who is the stumbling block? Such a great idea.
Planners.
Silos.
Planners.
They are the stumbling block.
Planners within the government.
Okay.
And if you approach the planners will tell you that our plans are not funded because we have national development plan, a whole authority, national development planning authority. So you may go to those planners and they will tell you this, we have the policies well laid down. We have strategies well laid down, but these strategies are not funded. So this one will take you back. Who is supposed to be funding? Who is supposed to be providing for this kind of funds? At the end of the day, you will go to the executive, you will go to the parliament. So we need to tackle this issue holistically, not from a narrow perspective. Holistic in the sense that the parliament has an obligation, the executive has an obligation, and the arm of government that do the implementation also has a role. So these gaps are not emanating from a specific area, but it's across the board. So now, therefore, that one can even bring that question: are there gaps in the management of the government systems? It's not for me to answer here today.
Thank you so much, Honorable Henry Banyanzachi, for your critical review of what has transpired, the way how we manage disaster in Uganda. And we're able to recall that there is a policy in place, but the implementation remains with unresolved gaps. And we are saying it's high time we bridge those who are in policy implementation and policy making, that these gaps should be bridged. And we are also aware that it's not only the responsibility of government, but the civil society, where the government might have not performed well. There are from time to time hard interventions, and also the role of the citizens. In our next session, as we go for the break, we'll go to look at the institutional system management, and also we look at the financial management or the accountability of the available funds that are always allocated for disaster management, of where it is believed, and this, as we cited, some of the officers responsible, there have been corruption scandals on record, of where the disaster funds are being mismanaged and yet not recovered. As well, yet it's known the people who are found in those scandals. Stay tuned on Smart 24 TV. We are analyzing these factors that determine on whether a country can move forward in terms of achieving or acquiring stability in economic development. Thank you so much.